Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to this update from the CandL and Learning Coalition, known as CandL. My name is Carita Pimentel, and I am the Family Literacy Engagement Specialist at the Black Child Development Institute of the Carolinas. In a moment, I will lead us through a quick icebreaker. Before we get started, I am going to turn it over to Murtado to give us some housekeeping.
Hello and welcome everyone. Once again, my name is Murtado and I'm here with Flor. We will be providing Spanish interpretation. That means everything you say will be said in Spanish automatically through the interpreters on the other channel. So in order to participate fully in this meeting, especially when Spanish speakers give the remarks, we ask for you to connect to this English interpretation at the bottom of the screen. You should see a little globe that says English. Please select that in order to listen to the English commentaries. If you're connecting from a tablet or a smartphone, we ask you to go to the bottom of the screen of your smartphone, and you may not see the globe, but you'll see the three dots. It says language interpretation. Please select English and then done to activate this feature. This way, you will listen everything that is happening in English, but you will also hear the interpretation if a Spanish participant should give remarks. So, muy buenas tardes y muy bienvenidos a este muy importante evento. Yo me llamo Murtado y estoy aquí con Flor y vamos a ser sus intérpretes para el día de hoy. Por favor, seleccione en el globito español para que puedan escuchar toda la presentación en español para su gusto. Si se conectan desde una tableta o desde un teléfono inteligente, vayan a los 3 puntos donde dicen más opciones y seleccionan español para poder participar en español. Additionally, in a second, I'm going to provide these instructions in the chat for those of you who prefer to read the information and follow the steps. Once again, thank you so much, and we do appreciate the effort to maintain language justice as an important part of this effort. Thank you very much, and I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Murtado. Presenters, this is for you. Please speak slowly and clearly to allow the interpreters to translate accurately into Spanish. Finally, due to the large number of folks on the call today, we will keep participants on mute to preserve the audio quality for everyone. If you have any comments or questions, we want you to share them. Please put your ideas, questions, comments, and high fives into the chat. Fawn and I will monitor the chat to ensure the presenters get to all your questions today. Dr. Devanya Govan Hunt, President of the Black Child Development Institute of the Carolinas, and Shonda Sumter, Project Manager for CandL, will present today. With that being said, I'm going to get us started with an icebreaker. If you can be any animal, what would it be and why? Place it down in the chat. And now I turn it over to Dr. Devanya Govan Hunt.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this CandL update. We are excited to share what we've learned, where we've been, and where we're going. Before we get started, we'd like to take a few minutes to level set. We start off with this slide. You hear me speak, but do you hear me feel? And this is a short poem by Ben Becker and Siri Usmar. Why can't you hear me? I feel like I'm screaming. If I'm speaking clearly, maybe you're not listening. Oh, why can't you hear me? We start with that just to kind of give you an idea of what the vision for care and learning is, our vision statement, some of the strategies that we use before you dive into this very important set of data that Shonda Sumter is going to share with you. So just as a reminder, for those of you who were with us in the very beginning, what our vision statement is. We are a cross-sector, multidisciplinary, inclusive coalition of families, communities, grassroots organizations, early childhood organizations, funders, businesses, and early care and education providers. We are committed to working with families and communities to engage their strengths and address their values as we reimagine and rebuild early care and education in North Carolina for all children, regardless of zip code. We will secure additional funding and investments, ensure early childhood educators and providers of all kinds are compensated and supported as professionals, and execute a strategic legislative and policy agenda to build a publicly funded system where all children have access to safe, affordable, high-quality care. This work has been and will be equitable and inclusive, centered around family voice and lived experience. It will provide equitable access and opportunities to each North Carolina family so that all children will be more successful in life. The strategies that we used and will continue to use in this work are listed here. I'm going to ask you to reflect back on those words that I used on that opening slide about being heard and feeling heard. The strategies used: we will center our work around families, and families have been an integral part of the information that you are going to receive in a few minutes. Ensure families are integral to the process and can provide feedback and share their values and experiences to inform the vision and work. We will continue to work with existing champions while also building new advocates in the process. This has been very important and very reliable. Develop and execute a comprehensive communications plan to build public will. Develop communication norms and processes to foster transparency and alignment among the leadership team and partners. Ensure the work is grounded in diversity, equity, and inclusion and provides equal access and opportunities to all communities. And last but not least, we will review and incorporate the work already done as we continue to reimagine and rebuild early care and education in this state. I list those things in relation to the words that I used in the very beginning for level setting. Because as you receive the data that Shonda Sumter is going to deliver to you in a couple of minutes, in a minute or so, I want you to remember that this information was not guessing work. It was not responses that we made up. This was very intentional work that came straight from the community. If you remember just a few seconds ago, families, communities, providers, partners, advocates were mentioned over and over and over again. Lived experiences were also mentioned. So as you receive this data, I want you to keep in mind that we are working and have been working, will continue to work on behalf of all of North Carolina's children. I hope you get as much from the data as we did while we were collecting it. And again, thank you for joining us, and we're happy to share this information with you, this update. Shonda, over to you.
Thank you so much, Davanya. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be able to give you all an update today on CandL and where we are. For those of you that may not know me, my name is Shonda Sumter. I am the project director for CandL. And today I will be reminding you. So we're going to go back a little bit and I'm going to remind you of the phases of CandL for those who have been with us and may have forgotten. And then for the new ones on the screen, I want to be able to show you what our landscape kind of looked like. So before I get into talking about the data and what we actually found in our listening sessions, I want to kind of talk about the different phases. So back in 2021, really, we came up with CandL leadership team came up with 5 phases of CandL that we would go through. And it started in January of 2022. And that first phase of CandL was the intense data collection. And so it started out, was supposed to be 9 months, and it ended up being a year because a funder, Dogwood, actually found out the logistics of how we were going to actually collect this data. They were very interested and wanted us to expand in the West. So it actually ended up being more like a year of data collection, which was very, very, very good. And so we did that data collection, and that's what I'm going to present to you today. From there, we moved into phase 2, where the leadership team, before we even started phase 1, the leadership team sat down and we did an assessment and came up with a vision of what we thought the vision for CandL would be, which stands for care and learning. And so we had that vision written down. And what we did in phase 2 is we went back and revisited that vision based off of what we received from the data in phase 1. So we kind of took the data from phase 1, put it right next to the vision, and made sure that it aligned. Where it didn't align, we changed the vision to match the data, because this is, like Davanya has said, community driven. And that's what makes CandL so different. We are currently in phase 3 of CandL, which is where we brought in our policy team, our policy experts. They're currently working, they're currently meeting, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what they will be doing after I go through the data. And we'll talk about the rest of the 5 phases. But I just kind of wanted to kind of let you know where we are now. We're in phase 3, where we've been in phase 1 with the data collection, phase 2 with making sure and reassuring that that vision matched what the community said. And now we're in phase 3, where the policy team is meeting. All right. And so let's get started with this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about where we're going after this. So we just heard about the listening tours. In the listening tours, we actually went out and we spoke to some experts. We have a lot of experts on this line. Some of us are experts in policy, some of us are experts in community engagement and things like that. But we went out and we sat at the feet of parents and childcare providers, the true experts in early childhood education. And we asked them thought-provoking questions to really determine, examine, put together a plan in which how we would advocate for them and stand alongside them as experts to advocate. And so to give you a snapshot of what the family community engagement team did, or our leadership team, with phase 1, I just want to take a pause to just really give them their flowers, because they did an awesome job with phase 1 of collecting this data. So we held 56 listening sessions across the state in 34 different counties. I'm going to say that again. 56 listening sessions across 34 counties. Very impressive. And what we did with these listening sessions and in these counties, we wanted to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. So we gave mini grants to grassroots organizations within those counties, and we brought them on as partners. And when we gave them this mini grant was doing two things. It was actually supporting the work that they were already doing on the ground, but it also served as a support for them, financial support for them to hold listening sessions in their counties. And the reason why that was important is because we wanted our experts, our parents, and our providers to be comfortable with telling their story and comfortable with talking about opportunities and things that are hard for them with folks that they trusted. And so that was a very important part of this project. So we gave these mini grants. These organizations partnered with us. They brought in these experts in their communities. We had these listening sessions, and we spoke with or came across, I'm going to say, over 529 experts, because everyone did not get a survey. We missed a couple here and there, which is to be expected. But 529 experts, 308 which were parents, 221 which were providers. Very good mix of folks. And within the 529 experts, 24% were white, 37% were Black, 16% was Hispanic, Latinx, and then 23% was Asian and Indigenous. Very good sample across the state of North Carolina. So round of applause to the phase 1 team. Job well done. So before I get into talking about what it is that we found, we have a full data report. Some of you may have seen this full data report. It's pages and pages and pages and pages of a lot of words on a document. And it's telling all of the details about what we were told, what we heard, what we found out in these listening sessions, like direct quotes and things like that. But we wanted to put together this presentation, which you will have access to, it will go out in a couple of days, so that you all will be able to take this and use it in your communities to kind of give your communities a snapshot or a summary of what was really founded in these listening sessions. And so here's a direct quote from a parent in Harnett County. It says, "Lots of families are running into wait lists, but I really need a job now. I can't wait months to maybe wait for my kid to get a spot, but I don't want to just put my kid anywhere." Direct quote from a parent. Here's what a provider had to say. "What the community is lacking is the real understanding of what it means to be a childcare provider, to be a teacher. It's not a drop-off center, a babysitting situation. Sometimes I think the respect for what we do is not valued, which is why we are one of the most underpaid professions you can have." Now, I have to warn you, some of these direct quotes are definitely heartbreaking, because this is their truth, and this is how they feel, and this is what they're living with. So let's go into what we actually learned. So across all the counties who participate in the listening sessions, we found that there's a three-legged stool. And at the head of that is trust. And this is what the community or the experts of parents and providers told us. This is how they define quality childcare. Trust, very important for them. It was a number one. That's why it's at the top. And then you have affordability and availability. And so without all three of these legs, childcare is really closed off to parents, or it puts parents and families in situations where they have to make hard decisions and very hard sacrifices. So this is a snapshot of really what we have found. Now, we've also listened to providers, and providers have said to us that they try to give these three components to their families, but it's sometimes it's a struggle, and there's opportunities that's stopping them from being able to do that. And it's very frustrating for providers because they're very emotionally connected to their families. So we talked about the number one theme, which is trust. And let's dive into that a little bit. Here's a quote from a parent out of Mecklenburg County. I haven't felt enough trust to leave my children in a daycare. There are people who sometimes don't have the love or the preparation. It would be better to leave them somewhere where teachers love what they do. So let's talk about some trust factors. There's 4 trust factors that kind of rose to the top. Families desire more kin care and in-home care. Basically, listening to that quote before, we can't assume that parents and families will choose a child care center over kin care or in-home care. It depends on where their values lie, and they have a lot of value in kin care and in-home care. And so we must recognize them as such. Star ratings create barriers for parents and providers. Diversity of teachers and children, and language and culture. That's important. That gives them trust. That's a trust factor. Lack of information, or the other end of that, information overload as it relates to childcare and parent resources. So these are some of the trust factors that kind of rose to the top for us, kind of some things that we pulled out of that data that was actually analyzed by the Link Group. Next, we have affordability. And here's a quote from a parent in Hertford County. It's hard to be middle class and childcare being $2,000 a month. Listen to the sacrifice and listen to the struggle. So I stayed home and struggled. I didn't work. There was no point. With the voucher, I'm able to work now. So we're having families that are putting their careers on pause. They're making very hard decisions, making very huge sacrifices in order to be able to afford childcare. Some affordability factors I'm going to list for you here are high costs of childcare limits parents' ability to work, outdated childcare subsidy system that came up, cost barrier to star rating system keeps providers out, and then barriers to grant opportunities in underserved areas. Now, that third leg, availability. Here's a quote from a parent. A program may be available for 2, 3, or 5 days in a short amount of hours, but it takes 45 minutes to get there, which is not feasible with the commute and traffic and gas for just a few hours of childcare. That has been the biggest hurdle to finding care. Can you imagine having to get in your car and drive 45 minutes just to drop your children off for childcare, and then you still have to go to work, then at the end of the day, you go back to get them, and there's a 45-minute drive back home. That's a lot. So here are our availability factors: low wages plus lack of benefits, staff shortages, and high turnover, long waiting lists to enroll in care, lack of transportation, long commutes to get to care, and then lack of non-traditional hours at child care centers. We heard this a lot. Parents who work third shift and don't work the traditional hours. So we talked about trust. Trust kept coming up, like just singing. It was just something that was just ringing through the data. How will we know we're achieving greater equity? Okay. So these are some things that will be nice to have, like desired results. And so I just want you to imagine that all of these things were true, and we had all of these things, and what that would actually mean for early childhood education. Parents have more options for affordable, accessible, and quality care, particularly in rural areas and during non-traditional hours. Parents are not spending more than 10% of their income on childcare. Wouldn't that be nice? Childcare providers are respected and paid a sustainable wage and have ample opportunities for career development and advancement. Increasing state and local investments for in-home and kin care providers, reducing the barriers for entry for new businesses. So then we would have more centers opening. The investment is there for in-home and kin care. We're able to have more locations, and parents don't have to drive a 45-minute drive. Think about that. Quality of childcare is determined and defined through collaboration between the providers, the parents, and the caregivers. And the quality of care is not determined by how far apart your sockets are. And it's actually defined by collaboration. There is a consistent availability of skilled, respected, and culturally competent providers and care for children and families across race, region, ability, socioeconomic status, and more. How about this one? Increased health and well-being of parents and caregivers, allowing for the ability to work and provide for their families. Parents and caregivers are experiencing fewer stressors while navigating the childcare system. Navigating the system just becomes easy. State and local officials are being held accountable for being responsive to the needs of those most marginalized in our current early care and education system. Think about if we had all of those desired outcomes, all of these desired results. These are some of the things that CandL wants to happen. These are some of the things that we see will be a solution to some of the barriers that are coming up in the data. So get involved. First thing you can do is get connected with CandL. If you scan this QR code, this will get you connected to the CandL newsletter. Most of you may already be connected to the CandL newsletter, which is why you're here today. I want to talk about this picture on the screen. This picture on the screen is a provider, a professional, an expert that resides on our family engagement team. And she attends our meetings And this was a picture that was taken when she was attending one of our meetings. Her children were playing in the background, and she's finding time to advocate for her children and families while at work. This is what makes me smile. And this is what we're doing it for. Those children in the background that are trying to learn, meet new friends, explore, and have all the opportunities. And she's an in-home center, and she should have access to all the resources that they do at centers. Now, I want to say before I go any further, thank you to the link group who actually analyzed the data and put together our data report. Very well done. And then some organizations that are here on the screen that have led this CandL initiative in the beginning during this phase 1. Now, where are we today in the project? Let's talk about that. All right. So let's talk about some teams. Our first team is the CandL Stakeholder Group. That's all of you. Okay. There's probably over 200 parents by now, 200 parents, teachers, providers, state advocates, grassroots organizations, and philanthropy that is connected to CandL. And so that's all of you all. And we will definitely need all hands on deck when we get to phase 5. Then we have our leadership team, and our leadership team is responsible for phase 2 and phase 4. So phase 2, which is the phase that we just went through, where we actually looked at the vision, looked at the data, and made sure the vision matched the data. And then they're responsible for phase 4, which is coming up after phase 3, because we're in phase 3 right now, which is where we would choose our priorities. Then you have the family community engagement team, which was who was responsible for phase 1. They did a great job. And you'll hear me say that the community engagement team and the leadership team is cohesively one, really, because it's the same people with a couple more added. So they're essentially the same group. And then you have the policy team, and they're currently meeting now, and that's phase 3. And then you have your coordination team, which is myself, the core team, which is myself, Dr. Devanya Govan Hunt, Javanya, and Teresa. Now, let's talk about the phases. Let's talk about where we are. So we talked about phase 1, which is the intense data collection. That was the listening tour. It lasted for a year. Then we went into phase 2 and we completed the vision for the campaign. So we actually compared the vision to the data, and we changed the vision to match the data. And now we're in policy phase, the policy analysis, policy gap analysis phase with the policy team. And they're currently meeting right now as we speak. And so what the job of the policy team is, the policy team is going to look at the data that we pulled from that was given to us from the community, that was analyzed. They're going to look at that data. They're going to look at the vision. And then they're going to look at the current policies in North Carolina. And they're going to determine what policies need to be changed, done away with, or added to get us closer to what it is that the community wants and needs out of our early childhood education system. But not just that, they're also going to look at the needs, and they're going to give us a recommendation based off of the current political climate of what things are good for us to advocate for, like immediately. What things should be on a list for us to advocate for short term, within 5 years from now. And then what things should be on an advocate list for long term, 10 years or more down the road. And so they're going to give that to us. And when phase 3 is over, they're going to give their expertise and recommendations back to the leadership team. And the leadership team will then look at the data, look at the vision, look at the recommendations of what our priorities should be. And then they're going to make a determination of what the priorities will be moving forward. So once those 3 to 5 priorities are chosen, then we'll move into phase 5, where we'll launch the CandL campaign. And this is an ongoing campaign. And this is where we'll need all the CandL stakeholders. This is where we'll need folks to get on the ground and advocate with us. So just to let you know who's a part of these teams, on our policy team, this is the list of folks that are currently working with facilitators on the policy, on phase 3, going through the policies and getting policy recommendations together. And then here are the list of folks that are on our engagement/leadership team. And these folks are doing engagement. We're continuously doing engagement while the policy team is working. But we are also will be here for the handoff. When the policy team has their recommendations, they will hand off to this team. And this is the team who will be making the determination of what those priorities will be. So in the meantime, we want you to use your voice. And we want to talk about one of the things, one of the issues that we all are aware of, which is the child care funding cliff. And so there's things that we can be doing now to help to advocate to make early childhood education better and moving in a right direction. And so if you don't know about the child care cliff, just to give you a little bit of information, it's about $1 billion in child care funds, to North Carolina. And these funds will expire in June of 2024. $1 billion, okay? So let me give you a visual. So it's $1.3 billion. This is the 2021 federal funding for North Carolina child care. And then the orange, you'll see the $4 million. This is typically what we get in federal funding in North Carolina for child care. And so you can just imagine when those funds run out or when it's no longer available, that's going to cause a huge problem for families and children in childcare. About 100,000 plus North Carolina children could lose their care as a result to this childcare funding cliff. And so here's an opportunity where you all can speak up and you can be heard. If you click this QR code, this is a take action link for you. So if you click on this QR code, you will be asked, you will be asked to put in your information. And once you put in your information and go to the next screen and sign up, go to the next screen, it will actually put together an email for you to your representatives, and you can tweak it however you'd like before you send it. And so take an opportunity to take action and let them know that you would like them to extend those funds. So I'll leave this on the screen here so that you can get that QR code. And then we're going to go into questions and answers. And so Devanya and I will be answering questions that you may have at this time. Okay. All right, Fawn and Karita, do you see any questions for us or comments?
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, Shonda, but I just want to point out that we put in the link to that action that you just mentioned is in the chat, so folks can just click the link there. And thank you so much to the North Carolina Early Childhood Education Coalition for providing that. And if you want to read the full CandL data report, that link is in the chat too. So thanks, everybody.
And just to let you all know, in a couple of days, you'll receive a follow-up email with a recording of this webinar. Also, you will have the slides. We encourage you to use the executive summary that we went through with the data to present to your communities. If you need help with understanding, if you have the full data report and you need help with understanding that, or if you need help with getting your presentation together for your community, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we will provide any support that we can.
And I am seeing some questions in the chat. So Shonda, Ramona Brooks asked, oh, I'm sorry, Susan Noblet asked about the various colors on the map. So when you were showing that map,
Yes.
And somebody who's better at tech than I am called it, I was accidentally posting those links just to the panelists. I am so sorry. So I did not answer that question in the chat. Can you share what the colors mean on that map?
Yes, let me go back to the map.
Thank you. And in the meantime, I reposted the action link and the CandL data report in the chat, and I will also post the newsletter sign up link.
Great. Okay, so in this map, that's actually a great question, by the way. In this map, the counties that you see in purple are counties where NC Child has CAN networks. And so those were counties that automatically did listening sessions for us, okay? And then you have the counties in blue. And the counties in blue were our pilot counties. So those were the counties that conducted their listening sessions first. And then what we did was we went back, we had a debrief, we figured out what worked, what didn't work, what we need to tweak, what we need to change for the remaining counties. We made those changes based off of those pilot organizations. And then you have the counties in yellow. Those were the remaining counties that we were going to do after the pilot. And with those yellow, the counties in yellow, those were our original counties that we chose before Dogwood Foundation approached us and said, hey, we'd like for you all to expand your collecting data in the West. And when we accepted that to expand our data collection to the West, that includes these orange looking counties or brown looking counties that you see in the western part of the state. And so those are the different, that's what the colors mean. That's what the different colors mean. Very good question.
Shonda, we have a couple more questions in the Q&A. And I think, let's see, the first one is, what are your thoughts about how the QRIS modernization plan will impact childcare providers and families?
And that's a great question. So our family community engagement team, I mentioned earlier that that team is currently working simultaneously while the phase 3 team is working. And so what we have done is we have broken up, that engagement team is broken up into 2 work groups within that, 2 work groups. So we have an engagement work group, and the charge of the engagement work group is to engage the community, keep the community engaged, keep the community connected, make sure we're pumping information to you all, answering questions, getting you the information you need to kind of put this information out to your community. And then the QRIS work group is a work group that's really looking at the changes that we're seeing in the QRIS system and putting together recommendations coming from CandL. So we put recommendations together from CandL for the QRIS system, and we are actually feeding those to the Child Care Commission or sending those to the Child Care Commission during their when they're asking for comment, public comment. And so we've done that. Actually, that was kind of like big on my plate about 2 weeks ago. So we have those two work groups that are simultaneously working, because we do know that the QRIS system is that's going to be a big impact on what the early childhood education system will be. And so we're definitely trying to make sure that CandL has a presence and that we are giving public comment.
And let me just add to that, Shonda, to that awesome question, is that not only is the family and community engagement team kind of keeping the community engaged, the way that they requested engagement is actually giving them the opportunity to see how their voice actually can make an impact. Mm-hmm. There are providers, there are families, there are providers that have come from out of the woodworks actually around these recommendations for the modernization process. And this has been a wonderful opportunity to see how they actually are in tune with what's happening on the ground, and they have opinions and they have desires and wants and needs for what they determine is best for their children in terms of what this modernization looks like. So it's been an absolute joy to be able to capture that in their own words and then funnel it in the directions that it needs to be funneled. So I think just kind of walking through this process of this modernization plan has actually engaged more parents, has engaged more providers to want to speak up and express what they desire as their children's first and most important educator and lifelong advocate, what they want for their families, what's important to them.
And Shonda, I see another question in the Q&A, sorry. The question is, which elected officials have been engaged or are listening to what you have to share?
Well, I'm going to turn that over to Devanya, because she has been her team who's been on the ground, and her childcare providers who are out there going to these childcare commission meetings. She can talk more about who they've been talking to.
That is a great question, and we can chat offline about that. I will say that we have been speaking to anyone who is actually listening and who has actually demonstrated publicly in most recent actions or in the past that they support North Carolina's children. Let me just leave it at that. I do think, just like when we talk with our families, I do believe that we probably have a really good idea of who's advocating for us and who's not. And when I say advocating for us, I'm talking about who understands, who is hearing what families are desiring, who's understanding and who's hearing what providers are asking for, what's working well for them based on their lived experiences. And we have the opportunity as individuals and as a collective to do something different by holding each and every last one of them accountable. Whether they decide to hear us in this moment or not, we can do something about that because they work for us.
And Fawn, I saw something else in the chat where someone's asking how can they get connected to join the policy engagement teams. I have put my email in the chat. We would love for you to be a part of either one of those teams. So just send me an email, and what happens if someone wants to join one of the teams is you send me an email and then we have a one-on-one. And so I get you caught up and we talk about all what's expected of the folks that reside on these teams. And then after that, we can get you added to the team. So we would love for you all to join us in advocating.
Okay, we have another question in the chat as well. The ITTI Care Project has identified a gap in the current ECE support system and are recommending creating an infrastructure of support for center directors to reduce stress for leaders and staff in child care programs. Has that come up as a priority in your analysis?
Actually, I can't say that it has. Devanya, have you seen?
I'm gonna ask her to read the question one more time because I can't see it on my end. Please.
Okay. The ITTI Care Project has identified a gap in the current ECE support system and are recommending creating an infrastructure of support for center directors to reduce stress for leaders and staff in childcare programs. Has that come up as a priority in your analysis?
Awesome. Thank you for reading that again, and thank you, Fawn, for placing it in the chat. That is a beautiful question, and I can't say that this, like, it's been stated in that using that particular language. Ms. Baker, that hasn't been stated in using that language. However, families and providers have both expressed that they desire to have early educators that are happy with their jobs, that seem to be relaxed when they walk into this, when they're bringing their children into the space, that they're taken care of, they're well paid, they have benefits, they have all of these things that would result in a less stressed a more relaxed early educator. So they've not actually said it in those terms, but those themes have actually popped up in our conversations across all 34 counties.
And where I think, Devanya, really, where we can kind of, where I think that kind of links is the mental health issue that kept coming up, and being able to provide just healthcare services, okay, basic services for childcare workers and mental health, because, you know, of all the stresses that they carry from day to day. So that's probably where I would kind of tag it, but not, like you said, not exactly as it's been said there. These are some great questions. Okay, Devanya, I am going to turn it over for you to kind of tell them about what are next steps and what, you know, what's next. We kind of went through the phases, but what are next steps and what CandL is doing. Again, we all want you to know if you want to get involved, if you want to get involved and you're not sure where you want to get involved, but you just know that you want to be in the number here, just email me and we'll have a one-on-one and we'll figure it out. But Devanya, I'm going to turn it over to you for next steps.
And Devanya, you are muted if you're
Yeah,
speaking.
Devanya, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Absolutely. That's what I get for teasing Shonda earlier about the mute button. So I'm just gonna put this, I put this slide back up here on the screen for just a couple more seconds, because I want to remind us of why we're doing this work, why it's important for you to be able to lock in whenever and however you can to support this work, that the information you just received didn't just fall out of the air and we didn't make guesses at it. For so long, in the state of North Carolina and across our country, we put our expert hats on and we walk into these rooms because we know what's best for children. We know what's best for families. We want to make decisions on behalf of all of our early care and education providers, whether they're in a center or a family child care home, whether it is center in a residence. However, what we heard across all 34 counties, across all of those listening sessions, was that families and providers feel like they're screaming at the top of their lungs and have been doing so for so long and not being heard. So in this process, what's next is we will continue to talk to the community. We will continue to listen to the community. We will continue to engage community the way that they're requested to be engaged. We will work with our phase 3 team, our policy experts who will help guide us. And just as Shonda mentioned earlier about what's possible right now, what's possible in 5 years, what's possible in 10 years, as we try to reimagine, you know, a more equitable childcare system for North Carolina. And then that information will get kicked back to the family and community engagement session so that we can so that we can actually prioritize or identify our priorities. Again, we're not just making guesses in terms of what priorities are. We want to make sure that when people tell us they are speaking clearly, when they tell us that they know what's best for their children, for their families, when our providers tell us what they're missing, what will make them want to stay in this field, what will make this field more attractive to them, where they can thrive as professionals, we want to give that back to them so that they hear their voice, they hear their contribution, and they can remain hopeful about what we can accomplish together on behalf of children and families in the state of North Carolina. So if you have an opportunity to click the link, if you're interested in just following along how the information is being gathered, how it's being digested, analyzed, how the policy team is dicing it up, come on board. There's room for all of you. We want to make sure that this is as inclusive as it possibly can be. So that's where we're headed next. And we look forward to updating you on what those priorities end up being after we walk out of phase 3. So again, I thank you for joining us. I thank you for listening. I thank you for taking into consideration how your voice and how your power, your genius can help move this process along on behalf of children and families in the state of North Carolina. And we look forward to hearing from you, working with you, and sharing with you in the near future. And I think I turn it back over to Shonda.
That is it. That is all that we have today. We look forward to hearing from you, and you all have a wonderful rest of your day.